shortly too. So in the meantime, I will act in the capacity of second vice chair and start the program. So it is now 5:01, so I'm calling the meeting to order. We have a quorum. So on our agenda, we have public comment, but I believe we don't have any public comment at all. Is that correct, Carrie?
Correct.
Okay. And as far as public written comment that might have come into you, Greg, do we have any of those?
No, we do not. Just let me verify with Carrie. Is that correct, Carrie?
Correct. There's none.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so and I know initially we had discussed about taking action on public comment. So because we don't have any, that's I'm assuming we will defer action to our next November meeting.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So do we need a motion to defer that action, Gary?
No, actually, there is no action required on the public.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's
Yeah.
correct. Let's
Yeah.
see. Okay. Okay, well, moving on. Approving the minutes of our September 7th meeting. Are there any comments or edits that people would like to make regarding the minutes of the September 7th meeting? If there is no objection, could I get a motion to accept the minutes of the September 7th meeting?
I move to accept. I second.
I'm sorry, who moved the first one?
Billy.
Greg, okay.
No.
Sorry, Greg.
No problem.
And Billy seconded?
Yeah.
Yeah. If no other comment, all those in favor say aye or raise their hand. Aye.
Aye.
Any objection? So moved. Let's start with the Kahuku Mauna report.
Yeah, I will cover that in my executive director's report.
Okay.
I was able to check in with Shane, and he gave me a few things to update on. You folks on.
Then why don't we just move into the executive director's report, and you can start with Mauna.
Okay. So initially, I was going to ask if we could switch items 6 and 5, but let's go ahead right into my director's report. I think that'll be fine.
Okay.
No need to switch. Let me pull up my notes here. Okay. So several things I wanted to update the group on. Obviously, there's been a lot going on. You've seen things about the master plan rollout, as well as the decommissioning efforts that are going on in the media. We do have our virtual public meeting covering the master plan scheduled for 5 p.m. tomorrow, October 6th. If you do not have the link and you would like to tune in, Carrie can send that link to you folks. The purpose of that forum will be to discuss and respond to questions that we have been receiving since the announcement of the forum. We are having to do this virtually, so it will be a Zoom meeting. We've had, I don't know what the final count is, but somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 plus questions that have been sent in ahead of time that we are preparing to respond to in the meeting. They cover a range of issues. Everything that you might expect is of concern or interest to people. People will also be able to submit questions during the forum. Whether we're able to get to all of those or not, it'll depend on how it goes. It is scheduled for 2 hours. And there will be a 5-minute break about halfway through. In addition to that, as we have reviewed with you folks before, we do have an online website. People are going and providing their comments through the website, which is what we had hoped they would do, particularly using the function where they can actually insert their comments directly into the sections of the plan that they are most interested in. There seems to have been a little bit of an uptick in activity in the last 24 hours, assuming it's as we get nearer to the public meeting tomorrow, people are a little bit more active and wanting to ensure that they're expressing their manao. We have had some comments, not a lot, submitted through our call-in line, as well as US mail, and the general comment form, which is also online at the website. So people are utilizing the process and the available means for them to provide input, which we're really, really glad about. I encourage you to tune in if you are so interested or have the time tomorrow. I think it'll be a useful and helpful process. Before I go on, Julie, to the next items, I just want to stop here and see if there's any questions thus far.
Anybody have any questions for Greg? I don't.
Okay, thank you. I see Diana joined us. Thank you. Welcome, Diana.
Oh, hi, Diana. I didn't see you there.
Sorry to be late. I had trouble joining up, so I had to do it a couple times.
Next item I wanted to update folks on is progress on our decommissioning initiatives. As you folks know, again, you probably heard in the media, both Caltech Submillimeter Observatory and Hokukia have published their draft environmental assessments, and both have held public meetings. I've sat in on one of the Caltech meetings as well as the Hokukia meeting. I would say that a common concern heard in both meetings was environmental contamination as it relates to the hydrogeology of Maunakea, disposal of the materials, the building materials, and how that is being handled, as well as questions about the best management practices to be implemented during the deconstruction process to reduce impacts to the resources. All of these items are addressed, all of these concerns are addressed in the respective EAs. And we have encouraged people to provide their specific comments if there's specific issues that they are particularly concerned about. The public comment process is moving forward. You may have also seen that in regards to the Hokukia meeting, that meeting did end up focusing a bit more on the proposed new educational telescope that Hilo is proposing for Halepohaku. There's quite a bit of interest, as we knew there would be with that initiative. We assured people that those are separate projects and that the new educational telescope would need to have its own environmental studies and permit requirements, or it has its own environmental due diligence requirements and permit requirements. Hilo representatives who attended the meeting, I think, did a good job of explaining the value of this instrument to their students in the program. Did get quite a bit of feedback to that effect after the meeting. So that was, I think, very helpful for people who were sitting in on the meeting to be able to understand why this instrument is important to the program. Videos of both meetings are available for online for viewing if folks are interested. So again, let me stop there and see if there are any questions or comments on decommissioning progress.
Any questions? No.
No. Alrighty, moving on. Regarding our advisory groups, I was able to check in with Shane. He's not able to join us tonight. He wanted me to let Maunakea Management Board know that they are deeply sort of focused right now on the review of the master plan. They were provided an overview of the plan a few weeks ago, and they will be meeting with the consultant team this Thursday to provide their input on various aspects of the plan. So they have been very busy reviewing it and preparing their comments for this Thursday's meeting. Those comments obviously will be included and shared with Maunakea Management Board when KKM Kahuku finalizes them. We do have some pending work that we are doing in reviewing the cultural resource policies that are part of the the comprehensive management plan. These are the policies that they developed and which we approved a few years ago. I think I've mentioned to you folks that they have wanted to take a look at those policies and revise them as needed. So we were working on that prior to the master plan rollout. We'll pick it up again after this Thursday. So that'll be another thing that eventually will come to Maunakea Management Board. The Environment Committee also received an overview of the master plan at their meeting last month. They're very appreciative of having sort of that opportunity just to get familiar with the document. They will be meeting with the consultant team on October 14th to provide their formal input as a group. Jessica Kirkpatrick on our staff is actually will be collecting and collating their input ahead of that meeting to kind of put it all together. So I'm looking forward to their input as well. I know that just based on the overview session that we had with them, there was a lot of interest in the master plan, particularly around geological and hydrological issues. So those two processes with our advisory groups are moving along nicely. Their comments will also be incorporated and shared with Maunakea Management Board when they are done. Once again, any questions on our advisory groups and where they are? Okay. Next item I have is I have mentioned to you folks, and as Andy knows, the university and the Mauna Kea Observatory directors and some of their key staff are in very early stages of discussions around new agreements. We have scoped out, I think it is 10 or 11 deal terms that we all agree need to be covered in these new agreements. They include such things as community benefits, decommissioning requirements, fees, shared services, and governance among others. The process that we're using is we are setting up working groups or subgroups to work on specific topics as we address them, to bring more formal and technical analysis to the larger group when we get to those topics. In that vein, Imiloa and the Mauna Kea Observatory's outreach group have been working on identifying community benefits that would be appropriate to include in these new agreements. They are having discussions with community members. I'm not exactly sure who all they are meeting with to get community input on the kinds of things that would be important to the broader community that would to be addressed or to be provided through these new agreements. So we're hoping to get an update on that in the next month, their work. We believe this will be a year-long process, and of course, I'll be providing updates to this group as things progress. Eventually, these new agreements, or at least the terms of them, will need to come to this body for review and recommendation for approval. And so I want to keep you folks up to speed as much as I can with how that work progresses. Any questions on the new agreement discussions we are having? Okay. The next item I would like to discuss is going to take a little bit of time, Julie, if it's okay. I do want to talk about alternate governance. You know, obviously the Mauna Kea Working Group continues to work on their effort. And as far as I understand it, they continue to work towards a report by the end of the year. That's about all I really have to report or that I know about that process at this point. They are collecting information from various sources. I was asked by Chair Nakashima for some referrals to different folks that we have worked with, the university has worked with, who has done various kinds of research and studies on the Mauna over the years. So I have provided those references to him and made some outreach to one of those folks who he was particularly interested in talking to. So there still seem to be in data gathering mode and working towards that end of the year timeline. Don't have a sense of where that will end up. However, as those who have been on the Mauna Kea Management Board for a while know, in 2019, the Board of Regents did pass a resolution directing UH administration to conduct our own analysis of alternative governance, which we presented in 2020. I thought that given that we have some new members who were not on the board at the time that we did this, that it would take a few minutes right now to review that analysis and the material that was shared publicly with the Regents back in 2020. Just to help refresh our minds and to inform our own continuing discussions on membership and composition. So this is just for our information at this point, especially for our new members who may have varying degrees of familiarity with this work that we did. So with that, I'm going to, oh, hi, Roberta.
So,
I'm going to pull up a few slides that I just kind of want to walk us through and refresh our memories. I won't go through the whole presentation that we did to the board. It was too lengthy. So as I said, in November of 2019, the Regents directed administration to conduct an analysis of alternative governance models to include models that considered or considered not being in the role of being a holder of a lease, a master lease, or a land authorization. So they really asked us to think about things quite broadly. And so myself, Jesse Suki, Stephanie Nagata was involved in some of this, and a few others conducted pretty extensive outreach, meeting with a variety of different agencies and other stakeholders to gather information on the different approaches that might be taken to structuring governance of Mauna Kea going forward. The result of that was we identified 4 models that were possible, and then an iteration of one of the models. The first model we heard about a lot from folks was creation of what is known as an attached state agency. So we have a lot of these in the state system. They include entities like NELHA, HTA, HCDA, etc. These are entities that are established through legislation with a specific purpose or mission identified through that legislation. They typically would have their own board of directors that are appointed by the governor and confirmed by the Senate. Some boards include persons appointed directly by the House and the Senate as well as ex officio members. But typically there's a nomination and confirmation process involved. It is attached to a state agency, so they have to function under state procurement and other kinds of policies and procedures. But their board of directors basically hires and fires their director or executive director, whatever the case may be. And they have pretty much autonomy for managing the functions that they're responsible for. Not all attached state agencies have property assets or real estate assets assigned to them. NELHA is an example of one that does. And they have a specific purpose to monetize or generate economic return off of those assets. So they're attached to a state agency. Sometimes they might be attached to DLNR. They might be attached to DCCA, sometimes to the governor's office. In this model, if it were applied to Mauna Kea, what we saw was the creation of some kind of stewardship authority that would have its own board of directors. It would hire and fire an executive director. They would probably want to have some version of their own community advisory council or councils, like we have with Maunakea Management Board, Kahuku Mauna, and the Environment Committee. And then they would be, structured as they normally would be. In the case of Mauna Kea, we anticipated, functions such as stewardship, administration, asset management, science. Not really sure how that what that would look like, but I think you get the picture. Some of the issues that were identified in the creation of this model is that it does require legislation, and typically that legislation, as I indicated, specifies what the mission of that organization is, and oftentimes they are tasked with the responsibility of creating economic value. So how that would be addressed in the case of Mauna Kea would be important. We would assume that as long as the state is committed to astronomy on Mauna Kea, there would be a future for astronomy embedded in that legislation. And in this particular case, the the entity would probably become much more like just a landlord and steward. Um, um, so wouldn't sort of function as currently UH does function, which is landlord steward, as well as trying to leverage the research capabilities of both UH and the MKOs to the benefit of the field. There would probably be a need to convert existing subleases and other legal structures that we have in place, permits, for example, to be transferred to this new entity. We anticipate, just in talking to people who are familiar with setting up these kinds of organizations, that political consensus would not necessarily be there. I have talked to legislators who are not real keen on creating attached agencies. So it could take several legislative sessions to create this. And given the need to have a new structure in place, at least by 2025 or 2026, with a land authorization, I think it would be cutting it close to push something like this through, but nonetheless, it remains an option. That deadline is tied to the need for observatories to begin decommissioning if there is no land authorization ensuring future astronomy on Mauna Kea. So that's the attached state agency model. The second model we looked at was the reversion of everything back to DLNR, which some people have advocated. We believe that DLNR would want to have their own form of some advisory board or boards. They would, in this model, take over, DLNR would take over the stewardship functions currently provided and responsibilities currently fulfilled by OMKM or CMS. How that fits in the structure would just sort of depend. And DLNR would essentially become a landlord with separate subleases to all the different observatories, including the UH observatories. Again, assuming astronomy on Mauna Kea remains a state policy. So all of the compliance work that we all do right now in reviewing projects and ensuring compliance with management plans and master plans and other permit requirements would all revert back to DLNR. Or DLNR could execute or enter into some kind of agreement with a third party to do those functions. That is a possibility. One of the advantages to this model is that no legislation is required. This could be simply done by the governor and the board agreeing to take this on. Obviously, some of the issues that come up are extensive workload for BLNR and DLNR, possible loss of UH and IFA leadership in astronomy research. There's all the issues of converting existing agreements and whatnot to DLNR and transferring those. Not sure it would be a slam dunk to achieve political consensus. And then again, this will take time setting up a new entity under DLNR. So we do still run up into this deadline for the observatories having to know what the future is sooner than later. The third model we identified was basically replacing UH with some new third party, perhaps a private nonprofit, not sure. That has been discussed in the past. So once again, that new third party would be under the DLNR. They may end up becoming landlords only, or they could, depending on how DLNR wanted to structure it, could take on some of the compliance roles that UH currently has. We anticipate, however, that they would be more focused on the stewardship functions, and really just kind of be more of a landlord when it comes to the observatories. So there are some issues with this, challenges with this model. A new third party, particularly if it was a private entity, may require legislation to establish the parameters of and purposes of a master lease or some kind of land authorization to this new third party. Being that UH is a government entity, it makes setting that land authorization up much easier. So setting this up would be challenging in its own. Lastly, there was a model we identified patterned after Papahanaumokuakea that we, for purposes here, called the Maunakea Policy Council. It would be comprised of representatives of various entities that have some level of jurisdiction or interest concerning Mauna Kea. The important thing here is in the Papahanaumokuakea model, the partners all have some jurisdiction, their own jurisdiction, whether they're a federal agency or state agency, and they have their own resources. And there's the collaboration that they've set up does not obligate any of the partners to give up jurisdiction or to commit a certain amount of their resources to this effort. It is intended to be a collaboration where people come together to identify common interests that they all, and management goals that they all agree to manage towards, if you will. And on occasion, depending on the initiatives or the situations, they will actually pool resources to work together. What we've listed here is just sort of some ideas at the time of how the council could be comprised with all of these members here. I wouldn't say any of this is set in stone. The important thing here, I think, is this is a different model, and it does require and rely on cooperation between the agencies, because none of the agencies give up, or if you will, their respective jurisdictions or necessarily are committing resources. And lastly, we had a version of that we called 4A, and that was to create a version of the policy council that could be established within UH that through some as yet to be determined whether this could happen, delegation of certain responsibilities, the policy council would have a little bit more authority and responsibility, if you will, comprised of members of various stakeholder groups, as we've discussed, and set up to essentially oversee the Center for Mauna Kea Stewardship. We think that we would probably still want to have Kahuku Environment Committee, our Mauna Kea directors as advisors and partners in all of this. Some of this could change, but there was the possibility that we explored of setting something like this up within UH. Would not require legislation. This is something that the regents themselves could do. And essentially what it would do is sort of redefine our own Mauna Kea Management Board's role in membership to take on a little bit more. At least that's how I have envisioned it and advocated it. So the last thing I want to share with you folks is when we went through this process, we knew that there probably needed to be some kind of method for evaluating fairly all of these models. I've listed and reviewed in my slides, some of the pluses and minuses and whatnot. So we came up with this rubric of the models on the left side, as well as some criteria on the top. And we started to go through the process of evaluating all the models, but then we decided, no, we should just focus on the one that UH itself could implement if we wanted to go this route. So we only evaluated model 4A, but I have made this rubric available to the working group through Representative Tarnas for their use if they want. They don't have to use it as is, but at least it gives them a starting point. But we do think that if, in a serious discussion of alternative governance, something like this would probably be required and needed. I'm sorry that took a little bit longer, but I thought it might be useful for us to just sort of refresh our memory on all of this stuff. There's obviously a lot more in material, and I can provide all of that to you folks if you folks want the full presentation. But as we consider our own sort of changes, if you will, I just thought it would be useful to share this work again. So let me stop talking. I've been talking too much.
Yeah, Greg, I have a couple of things with that. So on the fourth model, knowing the Maunakea model, other agencies use a similar model that I'm aware of too, but like Westpac uses a similar model. However, knowing that model though, the organization, even if it were Office of Maunakea Management, that requires a lot of staffing to actually coordinate all of those aspects into programmatic structure. So that's one thing that I do have a concern about. It's even regardless if the organizations have their own internal structure, that's really good, but actually coordinate it so that we can meet objectives does take a lot of time.
Yeah.
That's one of the concerns that I do have with using that model. But that model is good if the structure is set up to assist with that, with coordinating all those efforts in order to get to, say, a actual meeting where, or an authority meeting where they need to take a floor vote. Because even through Papahanaumokuakea, even through Westpac, there, it actually can take quite a bit of time before we can get to that point.
Yeah.
And if it affects the observatories, that could be an issue for them. So that's the only thing I caution about.
Yeah. So in the case of Papahanaumokuakea, in terms of your experience with Westpac, is it took them years to actually come up with their management plan, which just came out earlier this year.
Yeah.
And as I understand it from talking to people who were involved at some level with some of that, it was really hard because you had federal agencies in that case, along with state agencies, who really have very different views and requirements and needs before they can enter into any kind of agreement. So
yeah, even the authorities even the authorities are different, as far as regulatory requirements,
right,
what they can and cannot do, even specific boundaries, and that was really complicated to maneuver through those regulatory processes.
Yeah. Other questions?
This is going to be a tough one, no matter how we look at it. But
yeah,
it's doable. It's definitely doable, but it does take an enormous amount of coordination. Can I revisit? So just refresh my memory. So the Psyche and Nakashima and Tarnas, as far as that committee is concerned, the report is going directly to the legislature and the governor's office, or are we as the board going to be working with their recommendations as well? I'm really unclear of how that whole structure thing works.
The committee, the working group was put together by the House.
Yeah.
And so the notion is that a report will be delivered to the House
To the House.
in order to guide legislation. And they would like legislation for the upcoming session. So that's why it's a fast track kind of process. What will come out of it is, as Greg said, we're still in the information gathering stage, so hard to say
Okay.
where it's going to land. But that is the goal. It was formed by the House, independent of the Senate. So the report would go to the House. Now, whether a speaker wants to share it more broadly and how, that I think would be up to him.
And that's due in November in order to meet the January session. Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments?
That's all I have. So now that Roberta's here, I'm going to pass the gavel back to you.
So I'm assuming we are on agenda item A, is that correct?
No.
We're talking
right.
about the master plan and how these structures, or were you doing your executive director's report?
That's correct. I was doing my executive director's report. I just included this piece in my ED report this week.
So I'm assuming since there was no comments, public comments at all, have we gotten any kind of feedback on the draft master plan that was made public?
Yeah, comments are coming in. I think I shared some of this before you jumped on. Comments are coming in. There seems to have been an uptick in activity in the last 24 hours, and we think it's because of the virtual public meeting that is scheduled for tomorrow afternoon at 5. People are using the online commenting tool, which is great, although we have had some folks call in and mail in comments. One of the things we're doing with the virtual forum tomorrow is actually we're using some of the comments as a basis for questions so that we can start to address some of these things right away. The comments range from very useful and helpful, very specific to a particular section of the report or aspect of the plan, to more general comments about our alleged mismanagement, etc. So our approach tomorrow is to sort of take on all of the questions, all of the issues. We're not going to shy away from anything, and then people will have an opportunity to provide comments during the or questions during the meeting as well. So I don't have a number right now. I mean, I got a report right before this meeting with sort of end of today sort of update. And I know the comments, the form that we're using the consultants are using to provide us went from a couple pages long to multiple pages long. So they are coming in. And like I said, they cover all issues.
Okay. So I'm assuming your executive director report is done.
Yep, I'm done.
And as far as agenda item 6A,
Yeah,
my
let me.
understanding was we amended that item to defer any kind of formal acceptance or any MKMB comments. We're moving that to the November meeting.
Right. So as folks may recall, our conversations originally about this agenda for tonight's meeting were to really use this as an opportunity to formalize the NKMB's input on the master plan. But we're going to be gathering comments and putting that together for you folks. We did gather some of that when we met with you folks 2 weeks ago. I encourage people to send me further comments if you would like, so that we can collect that. I think it would be better for us to sort of have an opportunity to discuss collectively what feedback the NKMB wants to provide the university on the master plan before actually taking an action. So what I would like to do is defer any action on tonight on this item. I'll make a motion to do that with the idea that in November, we can put it back on the calendar for review and discussion and action if needed.
So are you making a motion right
Yeah,
now?
yeah. So I move to defer any action on item 6A until
Is there a
November.
second? Okay, till November. Is there a second?
Second.
Julie seconds. Any discussion? No, are there any questions? Okay, if not, I will call for the vote. All in favor of deferring item 6A to the our next November public meeting, November 2nd. All in favor, say aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion approved. So it will be deferred, at which time, Greg, you will have even more feedback for the board to consider.
Yeah.
Okay. So the next item, number 7, do we need to go into executive session to discuss MKMB membership and community engagement? Or I know, Greg, I think at some point we have been discussing, the MKMB membership, and I'm not sure if you had time to put your thoughts together about, possibly, well, I guess I take it back. What I recall was that there had been discussion about incorporating or expanding the membership of the board.
That's correct. And I've not completed, you folks tasked me with coming back to the board with some ideas. I've not completed that. But that was part of the reason why I wanted to go through this review, the whole analysis we did previously, just to kind of familiarize people once again. So I don't have anything to discuss in executive session per se tonight. But I don't know if others want to have a executive session.
Yeah, I'm wondering if there was anything more regarding community engagement.
No, I'm just curious what you guys are coming up with at some point. That's what I want to hear.
Yeah. So we're supposed to get, we meaning the UH and the Maunakea Observatory is supposed to get an update on that at our next negotiations meeting. So I can't remember, Andy, if that's scheduled for the 18th. I forget.
So I'm just consulting. I don't see it there.
Yeah, I saw something go out, but I can't remember. Anyway, it'll be
Oh,
later.
well,
this
no,
month.
there's a possible on the 22nd. I think,
22nd,
sorry.
22nd,
Yeah.
okay. Oh, yeah, that's right, okay. So after that meeting, Julie, we can bring some of that for your folks' review and consideration as well.
Could you send the link for the community forum tomorrow night?
Sure. Carrie, can you do that, please? We've been resending it all day long, so she's got it at her fingertips.
Thanks, Carrie.
Yeah. Well, I'm just looking at the calendar. So we, hearing that there isn't any need for executive session. I wanted to, talk about schedules. So being that today's the 5th, we normally look at, a special meeting on the 19th, but I'm thinking if you're not gonna get, a meeting or report regarding, community engagement as it relates to Imiloa. I'm wondering if we need to move that meeting to the 27th. And even if we did do it on the 27th, would we have information available, or is this just a meeting for UHMKOs and, Imiloa just to discuss the issues?
I don't know what we're going to get on the 22nd, so hard for me to say. But we are supposed to be provided some kind of report with some of their recommendations.
Okay.
I don't know if the UHMKO group is going to be ready to take any action on that at that time.
Okay. But as far as feedback on the master plan, will we have enough information to, have our special meeting on the 19th, to at least look and discuss,
Yeah.
the comments and feedback?
Yeah. We can provide what we have at that point.
Okay. All right, so was there anything else we needed to follow up? Because I'm thinking we approved the decommissioning reports. I mean, there's so many items. I'm sorry, I haven't kept track in my mind. What else we need to actually submit recommendations to the region? Is it just the master plan?
Yeah, that's going to be the next big one, but sometime in, I think it might be, assuming we hold a December meeting, possibly even the November meeting, the regular meeting. There's the environmental assessment for the new education telescope that we want to review with you folks. So I have to talk to the guy on sort of when. Right now, that environmental assessment is going to be reviewed by Kahukumana and the Environment Committee this month. So I'm not sure when it actually be ready to come to Maunakea Management Board.
Oh, okay.
It might not be till December, assuming we hold a meeting in December. Just for folks' information, traditionally, Maunakea Management Board has not met in December. So I don't know if we want to stay to that, keep to that.
My thought is, if there's some, there's some important information that we need to give feedback or give our recommendation. I'm not opposed to having a meeting in December.
Okay.
I'm not sure how everyone else feels.
Actually, I would concur because if the report to the House, the committee, the working group report
Working group.
to the House in November, and if we have access to that, I think it would behoove us to consider a December meeting.
Andy, I see you nodding. Diana or Billy, any comments? Diana's nodding.
I agree with Julie.
Billy, any comments?
All good.
Or Greg, I don't know if you had any comments either.
No, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Bonnie, any comments? Okay.
You meet, I'll be there, but yeah, the timeline of the working group, I just know we're supposed to be done by the end of the calendar year, but when it would actually see the light of day, I'm not sure.
Oh, so it's a calendar year. Okay.
I think we should just keep the date for now and see what we get.
Yeah. But okay, I agree. All right. So I guess at this point, as far as announcements, our next public meeting will be on Tuesday, November 2nd. And I'm assuming we will be continuing on Zoom. And also for, again, a reminder on October 19th, let's meet again in a special meeting just to go over the comments on the draft master plan, and just a reminder to everyone to please if you have comments, to please submit to Greg and I forgot who at
Jim and Julia.
oh yeah, Jim.
Yep.
Greg and Jim, because they're compiling everything so that we can look at the comments, at the October 19th special meeting. Anybody have any other announcements?
No.
If not, it is now 5:58. I will adjourn the meeting. And thank you, Julie, for taking the chair position and starting the meeting on my behalf. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So we shall see each other on Tuesday, October 19th. Thank you and have a good evening.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Aloha.
Wow.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Aloha.